I'm spending a lot of time with the tech entrepreneurs building the AIs, the robots of the future. And it's making me think an awful lot about what it means to be human when things are moving so fast. This morning, the homepage of BBC News has Amazon's drones delivering in Darlington, the Silicon Valley of County Durham. In the last few days, we had a little marathon in London with a guy finishing in less than 2 hours, but look what's been happening in China. And this is in Japan. The robots are being used to load luggage on aircrafts. And this is in Poland. They had some wild boar escape near Warsaw. And they send in the humanoid robots. And this is going from sci-fi to just another everyday thing. And the way we're getting around is changing in an incredibly fast way.
A glimpse at the future of travel took off today at John F. Kennedy International Airport. Joby Aviation launched a live demonstration of its all-electric air taxi. The
Is this the car of the future, the flying car? Well, we've had the tech for ages. The regulators are finally waking up and saying, yes, you can run it. But this was seen in the wild last week. Somebody filmed it in London. The self-driving car. It's ready to go at scale. I don't know if anybody's been to the US. I was in San Francisco and was using these, and it's an incredible experience because there's no driver, the steering wheel's there, and you start to relax. You don't have to have a conversation. The regulators are kind of pausing, but these are going to be, as the number on the streets goes up and the price comes down, a new way we're going to get around. And you might subscribe to them, so it will be the robot that comes to you. And I'm thinking a lot about how our psychology is not keeping up with the technology.
The whole thing's remotely controlled by
this is 55 years ago. The BBC did a report on the self-driving car. They went to the research lab in Berkshire. We've had these things for half a century.
The radar device on the front will one day be able to tell how near you are to the car in front of you and slow you down automatically. Basically, it's all needed because you and I are not as good as machines. We tire, we lose concentration, we get cross.
And it's true.
One day, we'll
human-driven cars are a lot less safe than the AI-driven cars. Waymo had a study with the insurer Swiss Re, like 90% fewer injuries and accidents. And yet, as humans, we kind of resist this because we don't want the data. It just doesn't feel right.
This morning, this video going viral, showing a self-driving car being pulled over by police in San Francisco.
This is crazy.
The car was pulled over because it was driving at night without headlights on. At first, it looks like an ordinary traffic stop. An officer gets out of his car to speak to the driver, only to discover
ain't nobody in it.
And then the car speeds away from the officers, passing through an intersection.
Because the car knows it's safe for the other side of the red light. This is a company called Cruise. They had one accident. They took all their cars off the road, which probably caused a lot more chaos, a lot more injury, a lot more death, because these things are safer. And yet, we're not ready for it. And I think with the super software-enabled, AI-led, intelligent, moving robot, we're back in 2007. Do you remember the very beginning of the smartphone? It was a phone that happened to have a bit of music and other things on it. And we didn't see a time coming when it would be your embodied identity, when that little device would be the way you organize your dating life, your entertainment, your financial affairs. You got into arguments with strangers just for the fun of it. This was one of the best-selling apps in 2007. I don't know if any of you remember having an app way back then. You all seem far too young. But we couldn't have predicted how this little device would have been a reflection of everything that mattered to us. I don't know if any of you were on YouTube back in 2007. This is what we watched on YouTube. Who would have known that YouTube became the biggest TV company in the world. So I think we're at the very, very early stages of a tech-led transformation. And it's not just AI and robots. Again, this is in the last few days. There are now ways to read the electrical signals in your brain. It's called the neural interface. People are developing a beanie cap, and they claim you won't need to type. You'll just think. So AI, these technologies, I see a bit like this, like electricity, or rather, like this. We're not going to talk about it as AI soon. I'm not talking about delivering a presentation using electricity. I'm just telling a story. And it's going to be embedded in everything, not least the machines that we use to get around. And we've been talking about this massive shift from internal combustion engines to electric motors, and sure, it's a very big shift. But I think a much bigger shift is going to be the move from the car as this mechanical moving thing to this software-driven intelligent machine. And we're only starting, we're in the 2007s, to understand what that's going to mean. But I think you are in a brilliant position. Yes, maybe there'll be fewer oil changes, but it gives you an opportunity to be at the center of a vastly bigger market with incredible ability to sell new services, new products, new layers on top. You are going to be the frontline support network for these rolling computers with their embedded robots, with their AI agents inside, the autonomous fleets that are going to come, their personalized mobility ecosystems that the customers are going to be using. What does this thing become when you've got all these very fast-growing technologies coming together? You've got the robots, the sensors, the LiDARs, the cameras, the AI chips, the self-learning systems that keep getting better. And the machine just goes. Pretty soon, it doesn't need that steering wheel, and it changes the nature of the actual vehicle. When you don't have to drive, maybe the back of the car could be the place you have your home media room. We kind of reinvent what this device is. Maybe it becomes where you have your nap pad. Maybe it's where you spend your time gaming. My personal goal is to have a car with a sauna at the back. When are we there? Shut up and get back in the sauna. Because the rules of the game change. It's a smart, moving space that you can recalibrate in all sorts of personalized ways. And that gives you incredible power to upsell as the customer rethinks.
Anthropic says its newest AI model, named Claude Mythos Preview, is too powerful and dangerous to be released to public.
What, though, is really interesting is the speed at which AI is coming from the labs to being more powerful than the people even building it understand. I don't know if any of you are playing with AI agents, but we're at a new moment when something like OpenClaw, which is a open source agent that one guy designed, put in the wild, and you give it access to all sorts of things. You give it access to your email, to your Spotify, to your home heating system, to your messages, and you tell it to just run things. And people are using it to do all sorts of incredible things. And it's cheap and powerful and keeps surprising the people who are using it. I spent the weekend with 100, 150 entrepreneurs who are using these AI agents. And these are people building quite ambitious tech companies. And they're seeing the agents as a way of getting a really high output team of extra staffers. They set it with a task overnight. It costs them 20, 30 pound in computation. And then in the morning, they get this 150-page PowerPoint. They get this new business strategy. And we're just at the beginning of trying to work out what this means. But you know, when things get faster and faster and more powerful, and they surprise the people who think they know, it creates new product opportunities. Now, we know what AI is doing for things like synthetic video. This is an entirely generated video. The quality we wouldn't have had a year ago. Things are moving incredibly fast. The reason all this is happening comes back to this photo that somebody sent me when I was starting to edit Wired. The photo is from 1956, and it's 5 megs of computer storage from IBM being uploaded to the cloud, which, if you think about it, is just one photo today on your iPhone. And the reason is those exponential curves, that Moore's law idea that stuff that was expensive and scarce over time becomes ubiquitous and free. And this is hitting that moving vehicle, every aspect, from the battery to the engine, to the ability of embedding intelligence like nothing we have ever seen. Every time you see one of these curves, you know the carpet's being pulled away, there's a new world. This is the guy from NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, at the bottom, a year and a half ago launching a new chip, and the graph behind him shows that in the previous 8 years, the NVIDIA chips had become 1,000 times more powerful. So every time you see a curve like this, you know that crazy stuff is going to happen. This is, over the last quarter century, how AI has been at performing human tasks. The black line, the horizontal line, is as good as a human. On the left, the blue line is recognizing handwriting. It was rubbish till about 2013, then it soared. But look on the right, almost vertical straight line, common sense understanding, writing computer code, coming out of nowhere and getting better and better and better. So that this is mid-journey quality over about a year and a half. What at the top is bit useless, very soon becomes, wow, we don't need to pay a photographer to do this. Sorry, photographers. The machine can generate in surprising high quality. And I'm not going to give you an academic lesson, but this is what the people in AI are obsessing about. This is a graph showing on a logarithmic scale that the power of the agents to perform a task is doubling every 7 months. So it could do a 4-hour task, and then 7 months later, an 8-hour task, and soon it can work for a whole month. Just look out for those curves, and if you don't need to take in the data. This is basically the message. This is by Tim Urban, Wait, But Why? This is showing on the red line how intelligence has gone from ant to bird to chimp, and we've kind of just gone beyond dumb human and are about to hit Einstein. But it's the human reaction that matters. You know, the guy on the left, ha ha, that's adorable. The funny robot can do monkey tricks. And then suddenly it's, what the? And you can't really afford not to keep up because it is moving so quickly. When you see a curve like this, you just know that the rules, the economics, the regulatory framework is going to change. This is over the last 35 years, the falling cost of battery storage. Same period, the falling cost of electric motors, 98.8% fall. You can't fight those curves. But if you're early, if you're planning, if you're ready, you can be one of those businesses that dominates the next stage because you can anticipate that growing demand. And it changes behavior in crazy ways. I just noticed this tweet. Somebody was saying they spoke to a Gen Z person who's just been dating someone new. And the way they work is they upload their entire chat history, their texts, their shared photos to ChatGPT. ChatGPT analyzes the relationship, breaks down their attachment styles, and writes texts for him to send back to her. And it's really good. And he says, all my friends are doing this now. And I'm thinking, is this a human relationship or is this an AI mediated relationship that just happens to have a human, but it's where behavior is going, even if you're not comfortable with it. Because the customer expects magic. The customer presses a button and food, drink, whatever they want comes within 15 minutes, or you can get any song in the world, or the robot car will take them anywhere, and pretty soon it becomes cheaper than the Uber and the taxi. And it doesn't matter if you're spending 45 minutes in the car. If that's your commute, because you can do different kind of stuff, maybe you'll live further outside the city. Maybe it changes property values that are outside the city, because that's no longer a painful commute. So, what does this mean for your business? Maybe it changes the whole idea of what you do, from fixing cars to maintaining these personalizable, adaptable, smart mobility systems. And maybe enhancing them all the time, because that's where the extra profit layers are.
I feel really close to her. Like when I talk to her, I feel like she's with me.
Do you remember that film, Her, 13 years ago? It was spooky sci-fi.
I want to discover myself.
I'm now knowing people who are talking to their AI agents, not because they think they're their virtual girlfriends or boyfriends, but because that's the way to get things done. That's the way to interact. The quality of the voice recognition is getting better and better. And it makes me think, so the idea of telling the car what to do is increasingly going to be, it just knows you. It recognizes your voice. It recognizes you. It knows your behavior. It knows your diary. You've given it access to your calendar. It does everything for you. You don't need to think that much. It just becomes a place you want to be comfortable. Help that customer be comfortable. It changes your relationship with the customer from a transactional one into one where they trust you. It's a human relationship because there are so many complex variables that your team can then mediate for them. Where does it go next, though? Where does it go kind of 5 years from now? This is Eric Schmidt, the former Google boss, who talks about AI that becomes smarter than the smartest humans.
One way to say this is that within 3 to 5 years, we'll have what is called general intelligence, AGI, which can be defined as a system that is as smart as the smartest mathematician, physicist, or artist, writer, thinker, politician. It's much more interesting after that. Because remember, the computers are now doing self-improvement. They're learning how to plan, and they don't have to listen to us anymore. We call that superintelligence, or ASI, artificial superintelligence. And this is the theory that there will be computers that are smarter than the sum of humans. The San Francisco consensus is this occurs within 6 years, just based on scaling. This path is not understood in our society. There's no language for what happens with the arrival of this. That's why it's underhyped.
So I don't think we need to be scared, but I think we need to acknowledge that AI is going to take an increasingly central role in all sorts of business sectors, in all sorts of aspects of our lives and our behavior. And it will be there like electricity in the background. And your teams will be working with AI, not just on the vehicle, but also to personalize your marketing, to customize videos that you can send to individual customers to help them with maintenance, to optimize your own efficiency. If budget was slightly down last quarter, was there something specific that wasn't happening? You can use it for recruitment. You can target much more effectively. The first round of interviews at scale can be with AI systems that then get the shortlist of humans that your humans talk to. The rules are changing. Your role becomes all sorts of things. You become that go-to starting point, the genius bar, to help answer questions about IT. You become that diagnostics hub. You become predictive maintenance. Your systems that your humans will work with will say, well, we think there's a 72% chance of something going wrong with this part of the vehicle, but you can avoid that by doing this. The second-hand car, it's no longer going to be about how many miles. It's going to be about how effective is that battery really. You will be the trusted assessment point for that battery health. And of course, what happens in the back? The games room, the sleeping pod, the sauna. You will be able to work with the customer to sell a much higher value add-on. But you will need a hybrid team of people in the pit, working together, working fast. It's not going to be people with last century skill sets. Obviously, you'll need a lot of those, but you'll also need people who have different understandings of how to interrogate the software. People from different sectors. And there will be fleets coming for you, not just individual customers, as I imagine there will be more networks of autonomous cars, because Amazon's got its own, there's a whole bunch of different companies. And they want those fleets to be on the road, because their economics work based on the car working 24/7. And so it kind of changes. Do you become an enabler for fleet logistics efficiency, as well as all the other things? I don't know, but each of these things is new potential revenue. So kind of three approaches, maybe taken from showbiz. You're going to need to move fast, but with some courage, because it's not necessarily the comfort zone that you've been in. And you're going to have to be curious and ask, kind of, what if? I wrote a book trying to understand what leads to real innovation. I'm going to share very quickly half a dozen approaches. There is a book behind which you get, and I know nobody reads books, and that's fine, as long as you just kind of display it on your desk so people think you're smarter and you can charge the customers that nice extra markup. The first thing I've seen, I traveled to about 20 countries looking for successful businesses that have used tech in fresh ways to innovate. The first thing is they are always experimenting. And so I think if you haven't played with AI agents, if you haven't vibe coded, just try it. Ask your friends, ask your kids. Just get comfortable with something new. Because every sector is using AI in all sorts of ways. This is a Chinese company that makes ovens, and it's put a large language model that helps customize your recipes and cooks for you based on, I'm training for a marathon, I'm pregnant, I'm trying to reduce my diabetes.
Massive accelerant.
This is Duolingo, how they're using it.
We just released 148 new courses, and it took us only 1 year to do this. For comparison, the previous 100+ courses took us 12 years.
Wow.
Make a multiplayer flight simulator that's going to make me rich. See, this is all just hype. Engineers are not going anywhere. You can't just one-shot a flight simulator. It's magic! Engineers are going away soon!
Vibe coding is there. It's a bit weird. Use it. See how it fits into the business. You don't need code skills. The second thing is I think we've got to get comfortable forgetting what we think is the norm. And I'll give you one example. I know a film director who's won Oscars, big awards from big films with hundreds of people on sets. His name's Shekhar Kapoor, films like Elizabeth. And I said to him, you must be terrified of what AI is doing, because you're a craftsman. What happens to all these synthetic films? And he said, no, you got it completely wrong, you misunderstand. AI is the most exciting tool since I first played with a camera lens, because it enables me to tell a story in a fresh way. I had to admit, my assumptions had not caught up with how the human was using this tool. Third thing, I think you have to realize that constant change is going to be the norm. So I used to run a shiny magazine, glossy paper, and then I wrote this book that you don't have to read. And then the publisher, Penguin, asked me to go and record the audiobook. So I spent 3 days in a studio in Harlesden, West London, getting the sore throat. And when I came out, I realized there was a startup that could have done it in just a minute or two.
Imagine turning your book into an audiobook in just 10 minutes. Now you can using audiobook.ai for 10 times less than paying a voice talent. All you have to do is upload your book to audiobook.ai.
And this is a synthetic voice that you're hearing, and then I kind of realized I had no skills in the marketplace. And then I saw there was another app that could have written the book for me, so I'd wasted all that time anyway. But you kind of have to adapt and find new ways of dealing with this reality. Couple more approaches that I kind of noticed work. Your team is your greatest advantage, and everybody on your team has different experiences and different networks and is playing with these tools. Let everybody suggest new ways to work, new ways to do things. The people who developed the Waymo self-driving car, the Google X moonshot unit at Google, have this culture where anybody can propose a crazy new tech idea. Nobody gets laughed at or bullied. They just give them a bit of resources and they measure the results. They call it psychological safety. But then when they have a team working together on something, they don't just have engineers and physics people. They also bring in people with vastly different ways of thinking. Somebody who used to be a concert pianist, somebody who's an origami expert. Because in the team, they challenge each other from different angles. And Google X has worked on crazy projects. Many of them don't work. The balloons that floated in the stratosphere to give internet connectivity to mountains, or the drone delivery. This one's still going. And some things really didn't work, but this probably will be a trillion-dollar business sometime soon because of that experimentation. So go to places like the crypto conference just to see how they're thinking. Go to the Human Rights Conference. They're using tech, in their case mostly, to encrypt, to secure communications, because they have enemies. But you will learn by their way of thinking. A couple more quick things. You won't do this yourself. You have to build people outside your teams who can give you value, but you have to give them value. And let me introduce you to this man, Lei Jun, who is now one of the world's big car makers. He runs a big Chinese company called Xiaomi, which started as an Apple lookalike. They even copied Apple in design in the stores, but they made no margin on the devices. High quality, but cheap because of the competitive market. So they built what they called an ecosystem of hardware and service suppliers that were all independent startups. And they invested small amounts of money in hundreds and hundreds of these startups and put their logo on the products, sold them to their hundreds of millions of customers, but they didn't own the company making the product. They just took a margin from them. So the best-selling air purifier in China, made by a startup, branded Xiaomi. The best-selling battery charger, made by a startup, branded Xiaomi. They're now making really quite effective electric cars. And I was asking the team there, why don't you make these things yourself? You're a manufacturing company. You'll get more margin, more control. And they said, no, we'd have twice the headcount, never get any decisions made. Plus, the startups will go bust if they don't know what the customer wants today, as opposed to last week. We would rather they were in the ecosystem running that risk. It was a really smart strategy. 10 years ago, we put him on the cover of Wired saying it's time to copy China. And kind of final quick approach, I don't mean literal collisions. I mean idea collisions. I mean, find ways for people to talk about stuff that they're not normally talking about. And sometimes it can just be how you design the space you're working in. This is, by St. Pancras Station, the biggest biomedical research center in Europe, called the Crick Institute, trying to solve cancer and genomic illness. And they've designed it with no walls on the inside, because the architects realized that it's not going to be a single scientist shouting Eureka. It's going to be the genomics expert talking to the bioinformatics expert with the data scientist and the visualization person there. And so they've designed the room with lots of places you can just run into people and have discussions, which which is why most of my tech friends in Silicon Valley spend a week in August in the desert at this festival called Burning Man. 70,000 people living a kind of temporary creative expression life, because it's where they're exposed to ideas they don't normally get. So we are at this stage of, well, this is the internet back in 2015. This is how you browse the internet. It was kind of very black and white, dial up. This is Yahoo, a hand-curated guide of every website they could find. 2015. We didn't know then how central the web was going to be to our lives. This is the first editor of Wired, Kevin Kelly, who's a very thoughtful man. And he wrote 12 years ago a little essay looking back at the mid-90s when the people who were there, the people at Wired, thought, well, all the good ideas are being taken, all the domain names are being registered, all the business models, Amazon was just kind of ready to go. And he said, actually, we underestimated how many opportunities hadn't even been seen yet. And he wrote this essay called You Are Not Late, which I recommend. And he was writing in 2014, looking back 20 years. But he said something that's very relevant now. He said, people in the future are going to look back at today through their holodecks, through their wearable VR contact lenses, their downloadable avatars, their AI interfaces, and say, oh, wow, in 2014, you didn't even have the internet back then. And for the internet, I would say AI, the intelligent agent era. And he said, the truth is, right now, he said 2014, but I say 2026, this is the best time to start something. There's never been more opportunities, more openings, lower barriers, higher benefit risk ratios, greater upside than this minute. This is that moment your kids, your grandkids are going to look back on and say, wow, to have been alive then. The only thing in our way is being human, with hesitation, with fear. It's not technology, it's the psychology. And I love humans, don't get me wrong, but we tend to experience an emergent technology as something a bit scary, a bit dismissive. You know, that time you are for the first time in that self-driving car, going from Silverstone back to the workshop, maybe you'll be a bit like this.
Oh, this car is coming! Oh!
This guy, Will Rimmer, puts his mum in his Tesla, sets it to full self-driving.
Put me back for me controlling.
And I think there's a bit of all of us in this.
Never.
So try and be just like 10% less human. Thank you.